Welcome back to another episode of the Wild Faith Podcast. We are on episode 35 today, and we have a special guest. We have Elliott Snider today, and he is known as the Freelance Duck Hunter. And he also has created a waterfowling app called the North American Waterfowler. So without further ado, Elliott, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I appreciate you guys having me on with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. We're glad to have you. And we were just chatting before here, and before we get started here, I gotta say, I love the black lab pictures behind you. I got a big baby laying around here somewhere that is a black lab. And so I absolutely gotta, before we get going, kudos on that one, because that's near and dear to my heart. So,
I was a yellow lab guy until I got a black lab.
That was it. Funny.
That was it.
So how many dogs do you have right now?
Just one. My wife's not much of a dog person.
Okay. Yep.
So she's warmed up to the idea. We've got one.
Nice.
Yeah, I miss her labs.
Yeah, it's a 5-year-old girl, Georgie. So I'll probably get another one 2 or 3 years. Probably then we'll have 2 for a while.
Okay.
Nice.
That's just kind of diving down a rabbit hole right as we start here. So I have a black lab. He's 7. What is your thought behind getting one in 2 to 3 years to kind of, train one new pup with a more experienced dog?
Partially, I made a horrible mistake and had her spayed prematurely. This is the first dog I've had from a high-powered bloodline. Mm-hmm. So I just didn't even stop to think that I might want to breed her at some point, and I've never stopped forgiving myself for having her spayed. And so I would really like her bloodline. So she comes from a dog named Flash, who's one of the best hunt test dogs in the nation. Wow. And so I want that bloodline forever. So I'm going to get either a half sibling of hers, or she has a sister named Linda, a pup from that. And I want on those breeds quickly. So every dog I have, I want in this lineage. So gotcha. I just want to get on it and get going and probably run a couple litters, and I'm excited to take the next level.
Nice. Yeah, that's always a hard one of like debating, when you first get a pup, it's like, oh, is this something that we want to do? And then it's like, once it happens, it's too late. I mean, we had the same experience with, one of our, I wish we had labs for hunting dogs. I grew up with hunting with labs and with short hairs, and now I love our golden retriever to death. He's a phenomenal family dog. He is not an outdoorsman by no means.
For sure. So Elliott, you got the dog. How did you first kind of get into hunting in the outdoors?
Well, my dad didn't. So my dad was a Western Kansas farm boy, but he didn't grow up hunting. But he was a farm boy. So when he married my mom's dad and brother got my dad into upland hunting. Nice. My uncle used to run Brittany's, and so through my elementary school, middle school, and even most of high school, we were pheasant and quail and prairie chicken hunters. And with the pheasant and quail, we were running over Brittany's. Okay. And we did some turkey too, but we were hardcore prairie chicken hunters, which was, we had so much fun doing that. And so we went on one duck hunt when I was 13. My dad took me up to Cheyenne Bottoms. I don't know if you guys heard of Cheyenne Bottoms or not, but it's the biggest wetland in the interior 48. It's just massive. It's like 46,000 acres. And so we went out there, didn't even have waders, didn't have decoys, but we went on a field hunt. And just sat there and got one sky bus, but there was something about being in the marsh. I didn't know at the time. I couldn't even articulate it at the time, but there was something about being in the marsh. It was just different. So I kept kind of asking my dad from time to time, I want a duck hunt. And then about the time, I guess I would have been 18 or 19, my dad decided he wanted to get into some duck hunting. So he got a pointing lab. And it was a black lab from a good bloodline. So we got into hardcore teal hunting, and we just didn't hardly ever upland hunt after that. I mean, it's just like there's something about the water. There's something about the acrobatics they do in the air. And so the moment that we started our waterfowl hunting, the upland is just basically, we weren't like hardcore upland. We would go out 5 6 times a year. We were casual. But when we started duck hunting, it was just like a switch was flipped. And that just changed everything. Right. And so from there, it just became about duck hunting, and everything else kind of just faded away.
That's awesome. Yeah, I kind of similar story, with the black lab, and there's just something about a lab, and it, you picture a lab out hunting, and it's out in a marsh, sopping wet, it's raining, just that scene setting in. But and I kind of have, like I said, the same story, is pretty much started upland hunting completely, and now sort of not switching over, but doing more duck hunting and going into the marsh. And it's kind of funny when you talk about the marsh, because like I took my wife out actually, and it was the day after our anniversary, and she was like, "We're going to go do what?" And, she's never really hunted or nothing. And so we went out there, and she loved it. She's like, "It's absolutely beautiful out here," and you just think of a marsh as dirty and gross and grimy, but it's like, there's something beautiful about being out there.
Lots of life.
It's so alive. It's just so alive. And there's times to contemplate, times to sit and just observe. And I wish I could still upland hunt. If I didn't have a 9 to 5, I would go a little bit.
Yep.
Because I would still like to do it. But that's just a whole, when you're walking and a lot of ag fields, and we did a lot of CRP walking also. But it's not like you're sitting and observing and just soaking it in. Like you can see a marsh breathe if you're in it for a long period of time almost. It's just like, the life is just, it's just different. It's just different.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think the pace is different. I mean, I love upland hunting. That's what I grew up doing. And then, I've slowly started to evolve into, and Luke's he's pushing to get me into it a little bit more and more. But like, I never grew up with waterfowl hunting, let alone I just don't have time to do it. But I'm learning to like it more and more, because I think you just said it so well, is like, it's just such a different pace upland hunting. But like, it's, for me, like, I'm a bow hunting nut, but to be able to go out on a duck hunt, like sitting in the marsh and just being able to just breathe, like you said, that was just a good analogy, being able to breathe it in, and just, you get everything's coming alive, and it's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. So what are some of those, like, first, I know you talked about kind of getting into hunting with your dad. What are some of those, like, first true memories of, like, where you really started cutting your teeth and starting to, like, like you said, those switches started to flip as far as figuring it out, and, kind of like, did you kind of start basically solely on, like, the public land hunting kind of thing for ducks?
Yeah, we've been 99.9% public land hunters. So the first place that which I still call it my hometown marsh. I don't live by it anymore, but it's where my dad and I together grew as duck hunters. And this was a natural marsh that's been there forever. And it was so silted in and this was before actual mud. I remember seeing my first mud motor, like a longtail, out at this place. And that was probably 94, 95. And so when we first started hunting it, it's just this silted in cattail marsh that you got to go up to your knees in mud to get to. And so it was just so hard, but you got through all this muck and you get to a spot where no one else was around. And the harder it is to get to a place, once you get there, the more isolated you feel. So there was lots of chance for isolation on the right days at this place. And so that's where we started out with teal season, but that's where that whole area is where we grew as duck hunters, and just the rat race of public and figuring public out and trying to have different schemes for dragging blinds in. And I mean, you name it,
Do you feel like the pressure back then is different than what it is now from when you were a kid?
I don't think so. It's hard because back then there wasn't long tails and surface drives, so access was harder. But I don't think so. I remember opening days and being packed with people. I remember one time we had taken clearing by the refuge. We had built a blind. You can build a blind in there, but you just have to take it out at the end of season. And so we built this blind. It's sitting pretty much right on the refuge line, and we get out there, and there's another group like 20 yards in between us. And it's public. There's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
So I mean, I remember problems with other people. That would have been, mid '90s. So I don't think that there's really that big of a difference now to then.
Yeah, I was just listening. I was going to say, I was just listening to the podcast about you talking about having people sit on your laps.
Well, yeah, my analogy is the park. Yeah. Well, here's the thing: is like, I know where I can go to be around a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I know if I work hard enough and I've scouted hard enough, I know where I can go and get there first and pen it in. And so my objective is not just to shoot ducks. My objective is to shoot ducks in isolation where I don't see anyone else around. And when I'm pulling the trigger, the mallard doesn't know that I'm there. That's my whole goal. So yeah, you can, if you're not going to work hard and you just want to go and get out of your truck and walk 100 yards, right, there's going to be people on your lap. But if you're willing to work hard enough and scout hard enough and take it seriously and you make it a priority to be away from people, then I have not had any problems getting away from people. And the people that I know that don't have any problems getting away from people in this state. You just have to make that a priority.
Yeah, that's such a good point. And so like going down that a little bit is, what are you looking for? Even just while you're hunting, what are you looking for as far as scouting goes? Like if you're in a spot that is completely brand new to you, so you're kind of going in a little bit blind to it, what are you looking for, leading up to that hunt and then even during the hunt to improve, potentially next time?
Well, it just depends on whether you're going on a trip or whether you're talking about learning your local grounds. If you're going, local, I'm just learning the grounds like the back of my hand. And this is a multi-year process where I'm in the marsh. I'm in the marsh all the time. I go to the marsh in May. I go to the marsh in June. Here, most of our duck hunting revolves around reservoirs, not necessarily on reservoirs, but on the upside of the reservoirs where the river comes in. Those areas, because reservoirs go up and down based on rain levels. So those areas go up and down based on rain levels too. And that's where all your shallow water stuff is. So learning what different water levels do to those upriver areas is really, really important. Because I work a 9 to 5. So once the season starts, I have Saturday and maybe Sunday. I mean, I've got actually my days on my calendar when I'm going to church. It's like, okay, if I'm going to church on this day, because I have to write it in during duck hunting season, then I'm not going hunting. So a lot of times I have my Saturday, especially once you get to November and December, I've got my Saturday. So I've got to know those areas, what the water levels mean for those areas. So if the water level comes up 7 inches, I need to know what that's going to do without having to put eyes on it. And I've already been out during the spring, so I know what vegetation's coming up. I know where the vegetation is, and I know how the water levels affect that. So once you learn those reservoir areas, and it takes a lot of time and a lot of note taking. I mean, this is a multi-year process. And any time the water comes up, if it's off season, half foot, 2 feet, I go back out, I check my notes, I look new areas. So it's just knowing your areas and exactly how the water works on it. If you can figure that out, then you can go during the season and based on weather fronts, and you can pretty much determine where there should and shouldn't be birds without actually physically having to see the birds there.
Love it. And that's almost kind of a perfect segue into kind of talking about the app that you developed. So if you want to kind of dive into that a little bit and just kind of give the listeners the lowdown on that, because everything you're talking about is just making me think of that app.
Right. So the app started a long time ago with my dad and I deciding that we were going to have a friendly competition. And so we got out a spreadsheet and we put a point value to each duck, each waterfowl. And so it was just me versus my dad. So like a goose was 10 points and a mallard was 5 points. And so I'll tell this side story as I go on this because it's pretty funny. So my dad and I we were basically, I think I was beating him by just a little bit. I don't know, less than 20 points going into the end of the season. And there was a snow goose opportunity. We're not big snow goose hunters, so we'll go out and stalk snow geese a couple times just for the heck of it. It's really fun. And so snow geese were at that time, I think we had them as 10 a bird. And so we were crawling up together, stalking these snow geese. And we've never done this before. And he swears that this wasn't intentional, but I can tell you that we've never done this before. So we've got all these cattails in front of us in this open pool at the same place I call my hometown marsh. And we're crawling up to the edge of the cattails because if you can get snow geese at the edge of cattails, you can crawl right up to them. They get really dumb if they're in huge numbers of groups. They don't really care because they're safety in numbers. So if you get right up to the edge of the cattails, then you just have to be careful you're not killing too many. And so we got pretty close, and for some reason he decided we were going to split up. So he sent me over to the right. He said, you go and crawl around over there, and I'll come over here. Well, I crawl a couple of yards. Next thing I hear, gunshot going off.
Oh, God.
He drops like 15 snow geese and beat me in the contest. I mean, he swears he didn't do it on purpose, but
Yeah, that's
I don't
funny.
know. I kind of feel like he did. So anyway, so that was the first year that our spreadsheet started. And from that point on, we kind of dropped the game off, and it just became, I wanted to keep track of number of hunts we were going on, what we were harvesting. And every year we would add something new. So we would add like average bird per hunt. And then we decided to track our shooting percentage. And so every year we were just, it was like this Excel spreadsheet. And we had been doing that from 2007 till about 2014, 2015. So we had 7 or 8 years in there. And
Oh, wow.
I had started my YouTube channel in, I guess it had been about 2016. I was getting enough of following. I thought, you know what, maybe I could turn this spreadsheet into a website and other people would want to use it too. And I had talked about this with my dad even before I had a YouTube channel. Like, wouldn't this be cool? The spreadsheet I was over my, somehow I had figured out to put in all these algorithms that were over my head. And so I was having problems maintaining the algorithms, and my dad would get in there and mess up an algorithm and throw the whole thing off. I was like, I told you, you're supposed to input in this cell. You don't touch that cell. That's got the algorithm.
That's funny.
Like, we can just get this website set so, it's just there and we can input into it. And so I got really lucky. I found a developer. Developers are kind of weird. It's kind of their hobby. And so he set up the bones of this thing essentially just as a hobby. And so you get the end of it does everything the spreadsheet does and more at this point. But you, at the end of the hunt, you go in, you name your hunt, you put the date in, you put the weather variables in, you put your harvest information in. There's note sections for each category where you can take weather notes or gunning notes or whatever. And then at the end of that, it takes all of that data and kicks out statistics to you. So it tracks all of your total numbers, and you can sort it by range so you can see how you did just for 1 year or for your lifetime or whatever. But it also keeps track of your average birds per hunt, shells fired per hunt, if you want to keep shooting percentage. So it keeps all of that stuff just naturally. And so over time, after you get enough hunts logged in there, there's a filter system. So I've got almost 500 hunts. So I can go in there and, I don't know if I said this before. So when you do a hunt location, you name your hunt location. It's not like you mark it on a map. You actually name what it is. So if there's a complex, like let's say it's Washington Lake, I'll say Washington Lake Mainland Point, Washington Lake Isolated Cove, whatever I personally call it, or whatever the name of the marsh is on it. So after 500 hunts, you can go into the filters and just select individual locations and see your data on individual locations, or if you've named them properly, you can check a whole complex. And then you can toggle weather variables. So you can look and see, like, how do I do sunny days versus cloudy days, sunny day versus cloudy days with various wind levels, different precipitation levels. So you can sort it all around. So I've got this one slough that I've hunted a few times, and sometimes I've only hunted it 5 times, but this is what my early data is saying. Out of the 5 times I've hunted it, there's been like a couple hunts where I've just slammed them in there. And other hunts where I just did okay. And it turns out both those days were southwest wind. And so my early variable is, hey, southwest wind on this place, this is when to get them. And these are all things that a lot of duck hunting is observational data, where something happens and we'll say, oh, the spinner scared it, or, oh, it's because it's sunny, But this observational data is so flawed because you're just guessing at there's so many different variables. But with long-term data on this thing, you can actually go in and have some true data to look at your different locations and break down what causes you to be successful, or just to look at it for fun. And one thing I've noticed with all my data is there's some places that I thought I was way more successful in than I actually am. After I because I had to go back and put in all my data into it for my spreadsheet and everything. And there's one place I'm thinking in particular, I'm like, oh my gosh, I thought I was so much better in that place. Turns out I only shoot 2 birds a hunt in there. So there's all sorts of things you can do with that for learning. But I mean, honestly, the most fun for me of it is I'm just a data guy, and I like data like that. But then we did decide to go ahead and bring back the game. So we have a leaderboard system now where every bird is scored, and there's been lots of fun debate on that. But it's me. I get to pick. So whatever I personally think the waterfowl community, kind of like a pintail drake is 6, a mallard drake is 5, a canvasback drake is 7, teal's 3, mallard hen's 2. So it's just kind of at the end of the hunt, you get a scorecard. You can add pictures into it from the hunt, and it'll give you a leaderboard for mallards, pintail.
Oh, that's awesome.
You name it, and I mean, no one takes that overly seriously because some of the most fun hunts I've ever had in my life were not limits. So I like shooting limits, but it just adds a little. I just wanted to bring it back. I started out with my dad, and we just wanted to bring that little fun.
Well, it's a cool tradition.
Right. So you can see like, where do I stack up in Kansas? Where do I stack up in, wherever the different places that you hunt are. So that's a fun little part of it. And we had a dog retrieve too. So this is the second year now we've had dog retrieve. You can put a little picture of your dog in there and keep track of it, which I've never kept track of dog retrieves till last year. So there's all sorts of stuff.
I was just looking at your app, or playing with it a little bit right now too. But so with the dog retrieve, I mean, I'm kind of down the same vein as kind of a data nut, and that's actually kind of my job. So I absolutely love this. The idea of being able to, because it like you said, it makes you so much more of an intelligent hunter because there's times where you're like, oh yeah, that's my honey hole, and then you start actually being able to see this data coming forward. You're like, I do okay there, but this spot over here that I didn't really pay much attention to. I've only been there 3 times, and every time I go there, I'm killing it. So yeah, and there
may be some weather variable. Like I said, there may be some weather variable where the ducks just like that spot on that day.
Yep.
So yeah. What's been the most unique data point, over the whole spectrum of when you first started with your dad to now where the app's at? What's been the most unique data point that you think that you've noticed that's interesting to you?
I personally do way better on cloudy days. Now the global community, if you click the global button, there's been like 30,000 hunts logged on there. So you can do some playing, and with everyone's data, you can't see anyone's hunt locations or even their names, but I can go to those 30,000 hunts and look at sunny versus cloudy. And the global community shoots about half a bird more on sunny days. Now, if you start playing with the wind and the temperatures, that's where you can really play around with this thing. So you can go sunny and cloudy, and you can just check. Now, is that sunny and cloudy only under a certain wind? Is that sunny and cloudy difference only versus different temperatures? But for me, I do way better on cloudy days. But the global community does a half duck better on sunny days, which I don't know why that is. I found that interesting.
So what is it going to take for you to build an app for bow hunting for whitetails?
Well, you know what? I'll tell you what it's going to take. It's going to take this thing being successful enough to do it, because I would like to. So it's called the North American Waterfowler. I would love to make a North American deer hunter, North American turkey hunter, North American upland hunter. Now you can already track those things on this, but it's very basic. Like you can't even select that you're doing archery. You can put in there, I shot a deer, basically, and it'll keep track on that. But I would love to do that.
I just love the concept, because Luke, you said it best. I'm not a numbers guy, but I enjoy looking at numbers and trying to correlate that and make it make sense to me. Just me trying to do numbers doesn't mix. So Luke knows that. but from like a data perspective, though, it's only making you a better hunter and giving you a completely different perspective rather than just winging it like I feel most people do. It actually gives you an educational guess. So like, it's awesome.
Well, true, and I'm so obsessed with waterfowl hunting. There's times I'm bored, and I'm like, what am I gonna do? Oh, I'll go play around with my numbers. I'll go look at the leaderboards. It just gives me something to go to when I'm just kind of sitting there bored, and to geek out on my obsession. I just can't get enough. But if I ever do go to something like the North American Deer Hunter, I'm gonna need guys like you. I'm gonna need lots of advisory boards. I'm going to need people that I rely on to be like, okay, I've got no idea what a bow hunter wants. I can tell you what a waterfowler wants. I have no idea what a bow. So if the time comes, I may be calling you guys in for some consultation.
No, that's perfect. Yeah, I was going to say, not to go down a completely different rabbit hole, but yeah, no, I can't think of anything that's in the market from that perspective, from a whitetail perspective. There's a lot of weather algorithms and stuff that have been produced and done, but not from a data collection from thousands of people that have logged hunts. So like that whole concept to me, regardless if it's for waterfowl hunting or for upland hunting, whatever it is, I think is just so uniquely cool of being able to collaborate and get all that data and just put it to good use.
Everyone that does these apps pretty much just wants to do satellite imagery stuff. There's a couple other people that are kind of logging like the North American Waterfowler, but nobody is doing it to the extent that we're doing it. There's other places that you can put your stuff in and to show a few graphs and everything, but no one is doing this intensive of data collection as we are.
Do you have some goals and stuff for the future that you want to bring to that?
It's a mile long, just as far as things I want to add on. Right now, what I want a satisfaction scale. I'm kind of hung up on this idea. So I want a leaderboard for it too. So I want, after the hunt, you got 1 through 10, you have to rate your satisfaction level. And it can be based on whatever you personally base it on. And so over the course of the year, you'll have a satisfaction scale. Like this year, I averaged 7.5 satisfaction. 2025 was my best year because I enjoyed my hunts way more than you. I averaged 8.5 on the satisfaction scale. I mean, I know it's kind of nerdy. And then I want a satisfaction scale leaderboard. Like, I'm enjoying my hunts more than anyone else.
There you go.
I'm kind of hung up on that idea right now.
No, I like that. There's something beautiful about that too, because like we've talked about already just tonight here is, you know, it's not always about, you know, the hunt itself. That's obviously why we're out there, but you know, it's also kind of a good, you know, reset for the soul, for the mind, just for everything. So kind of going down that vein, how does that work for you? I know like we're all three of us are 9-to-5ers. We're working. So when we do get that little bit of time on the weekend, whether it's a Saturday morning or a Sunday afternoon, what does that kind of look for you, and how do you kind of carve that time out for yourself?
Can you rephrase the question? I'm not quite sure I fully understand it.
Yeah, so like, you know, like when you go out to the marsh, right? You're going out there to hunt, to shoot ducks, obviously, but what, you know, how do you you know, like when you're out there, what are some of those things that just like gives you that peace of mind, that refreshing of the kind of that soul piece, and then you know, that kind of is where we're kind of trying to tie in that faith piece too, is where you know, when you're in the outdoors, it's kind of that natural reconnection with your faith sometimes.
I find that the smaller the group size, the higher the spiritual connection. So I did, and I don't know how much you want me going into the spiritual stuff now. Do you want me to
dive in?
Okay.
Love it.
So I was raised in a Christian home, and my parents were very conservative Christians. And as I was all the way up through high school, I didn't party. I didn't do any of that stuff. You know, through high school, I was just into hunting, sports, fishing, pretty much. When I went to college, I kept having these creeping doubts that people couldn't answer. Well, I didn't go to that many people to answer. I went to one college counselor. He was a counselor that was in college at like a summer camp, and he couldn't answer my questions. So I just kind of, these questions inside me just kept bubbling and festering and growing, and I don't know why I never went to my dad with them, because he probably could answer them. But I think it needed to be someone other than my parents to answer.
Sure.
And so they grew and grew and grew, and so my distance from God grew and grew and grew, and I got a baseball and became my life, and then hunting also, and so they kind of replaced any relationship I had with God, and so I just veered off. And then so from age 20 to 35, depending on the day, most of the times I just kind of would have said that I'm agnostic, but I certainly wasn't following God. And then I had a moment in which so I had a first failed marriage, second marriage that was failing. We ended up going to church together. My second wife and I did. I don't remember why we decided to do that. And we stumbled into this church, and the sermon that day at that church was exactly answered all of the questions. I needed, well, it actually takes more faith to believe to be an atheist than it does to believe in a creator. Based on everything that we see, all the complexity of life, from the language and DNA to some of the micro machines inside the body to, just the complexity of life, I fully believe that it makes more sense to believe that there is a God. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the Christian God at this point, but just to say, okay, it makes way more sense that there is a God versus isn't a God. And in that one sermon, had I heard that sermon when I was 18, my life might have been completely different. Had there been YouTube with apologetics on it when I was 18, my life might have been a little different. But from that moment on, it's like I knew I needed to get back to God, but it took me So that marriage, the closer I got to God, the worse the marriage got. That marriage dissolved. Essentially, she cheated on me and left me, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me. And that was when I was about 35. And so from that point, I was like, okay, God, let's go. I'm in. I am 100% in. And he took me for about 2 years where I didn't have any doubts at all. And it was just like he just was healing me and restoring me. And then it's kind of like God said, okay, now we're going to, because I mean, my big question of whether there's a God or not was answered, but there was still, I'm just a doubting, skeptical person. Like if someone gives me a fact, I'm like, well, I'm not just, that's just my nature.
Yeah.
My wife hates the fact that I'm picking up the phone. Let me check that, So that's just how I am. So over the course of a few years before I met my current wife, it was like, I was like, all right, you ready? Here we go. Here's a doubt. What you gonna do with it? Here's another one. What you gonna do with it? And so, but during that restorative time, I really got into waterfowl hunting at a different level. This would have been like 2006, 2007. And I didn't have any friends hunting. So for about an entire year, I hunted by myself. And I'm accustomed to being out by myself and hunting but this year was like I probably went on 25 hunts by myself. And during that time, I had some moments in the dark, clear out in the middle of nowhere. There was one time in particular where it's like I had to work so hard to get to where I was at. And I had to portage my little boat. I had to cross a couple bodies of water. It was just like such a struggle to get in there. And I got in the place, and I was in my little boat, and it was like kind of flooded. Not people from the South wouldn't call it flooded timber, but it was flooded timber. And I got in there, and I just looked up into the night sky, and that moment was the closest connection that I've ever personally felt. But I had lots of connection to God. I had lots of times like that during that restorative time where it was just like God and the Spirit was just in my face when I was out hunting by myself and experiencing that time by myself. And so when I'm hunting by myself, I always get that emotion and get that feeling. So I've got a lot more people I hunt with now, but I still make sure 4 or 5 times a year that I go by myself because that close connection that I have with God, and I don't not feel it when I'm out in nature, but there's something called the book of nature where it's like so obvious there's a creator, and many, many hunters experience it and talk about it. Not everyone, some people, push it to the back part of their brain and give reasons as to why there's, it's not there and whatever. But for the vast majority of hunters that I talk to, when they're out in nature, and this is what I love about duck hunting, we talked about before, like the contemplative side where you're sitting there and the life, it's just like, it's so apparent, and the stars and the Milky Way. And it's just so ridiculously apparent during that time when you're with God. But to put a capstone on the whole doubt thing, I got remarried to the most godly, wonderful woman in the world. It's like, I started dating again, and I just kept telling God, hey, I suck at picking women. So you pick this one. I date a girl, and every morning I'd be like, all right, what do you think? I was like, I just kept telling God, I want your will, not mine. Your will, not mine. Don't let me pick. And I've got the most wonderful marriage. She brings me up. She doesn't. I mean, it's not like I'm trying to drag her up. It's like, another thing I learned about marriage that I made a mistake of. It's like when you're a hurting non-believer, your spouse, you want to try to stuff them into your soul like they're a god, and they can't fulfill you. Like that whole "you fulfill me" thing. No, your spouse does not fulfill you. So the whole goal with my wife and I now is Christ is in the middle. We circle Christ and complement each other. And we have a biblical relationship. I read while I'm supposed to treat my wife, and I treat her the way the Bible tells me to treat her, and vice versa. And it's a beautiful dance. And God just provided me with the most wonderful, spectacular, godly woman because I gave it to Him. And I always had thought during years, it's like, oh man, those rules, and it's like bondage. But the crazy, weird thing about it is when you give your life to Christ, it's freedom. It's hard to even explain to people, but it is. It's freedom. I have a cancer scare. I'm relying on God. I'm like, hey, if I'm going to have cancer, which I had a cancer scare like 10 years ago. If I'm going to have cancer, I'm going to walk through this like you shoulder this. So long-winded, probably a long-winded answer. Oh, the doubt, real quick, the doubt thing. So as I got married, God let the doubts, like, he just bombarded me with them. And I went through a couple of years of the most painful, there's different forms of doubt. The most painful emotional doubt, which Gary Habermas, I leaned on him. He does, I don't know if you guys know who Gary Habermas is, but he's got several books on doubt and the different types of doubt. And so I knew that I was like married to God. It was like, there's no way that I'm going, but I was having such a I was having just stupid emotional doubt. But God showed me how to go out and attack it and solve it, and now it's gone. And so it's like I tackled every single question that I could possibly have that was going to bother me, and now the doubt's it's just gone. It's over. So,
amen. Love that. That's good. Yeah, it's that's a good story. It's crazy once you can, it's hard to get to that point. Or we've had quite a few people on the podcast, and Luke's had his moment, and I've had my moment, and where you finally surrender yourself over and put it up to him, and it's you question yourself all the way through that time. Is like, is he really here? And that whole entire time he's sitting right there with you, just waiting patiently for you to open yourself up to him. And it was beautifully said. That was really, really good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think he's rebuilding you into what plans he has for you. So he lets you make a fool of yourself and lets you drop yourself to your knees, and then he builds you up for a job and a plan.
Yeah, I mean, that's perfectly said. I mean, I always go back to the Billy Graham sermon about, there's those times where you have to walk by sheer faith alone, because there's just times where you're crying out to God and you're wanting him to just appear in front of you and be like, this is the way you need to go, this way or that way. But those are those, when you're having those doubts, when you're having those times of peril, whatever it is, those are those times where you have to walk by sheer faith alone. And that's the surrender, right? That's surrendering and saying, God, it is not, and like you said, it's not my will, let not my will be done, but yours. Like, this is all part of your plan. This is, not I'm here, but it's you, right? You're working through me. And yeah, man, it's just so, and it's tough because, like you said too, it's tough when people ask, like, well, how do you know? How do you completely surrender yourself to his will and trust that everything is going to be okay? And, I think you never fully get rid of that doubt. There's always some sort of little bit of doubt there, but you also have this huge person, you have God behind you. And I always talk about how he's, the hand that catches you, the arms that catch you when you fall, but he's the hand on your back to kind of push you forward through whatever you're going through.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Love it. So what do you got we got kind of deep there. What do you got kind of cooking? What do you got cooking for the fall? What are some of the plans that you have going on this fall? And then,
well, teal season ended. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Were you going to add something to that?
Oh, I was just going to ask you just on top of that, because I know like Minnesota's duck season's probably a lot different than from where you're at. So what is, like when does, obviously ducks rolling for you, but like what is your season down there?
So teal season is a big part of what we do. So we've got Nebraska and Kansas. So it's depending on the year, 4 or 5 weeks of teal season. So that's always fun. And I know you guys had Jordan Cromer on here. I just got back from a trip with him on his houseboat.
Oh yeah, I saw that. That looked it's a good episode.
Yeah, that was fun. That was really fun. So I'm not a huge wood duck guy, but that was a lot of fun. And what he has done is incredible. And he's a tenacious individual. Jordan is. He's like no one I've ever met. He's just a bulldog. So, but that was the Iowa opener. So hunted that up there. Came back. I've taken a couple weeks off. There's places I could hunt, but I'd have to travel a little bit. And I've got a big trip this weekend up into Nebraska. I leave Thursday night for that. So I took a couple weeks off. I needed to get rested up, spend time with my wife, make sure I was getting to church. And because September and October is normally when I'm taking a lot of trips, because in Kansas, we've got 4 multiple zones. And so as things start in Nebraska also. So between Nebraska and Kansas, if I want to do a lot of hunting in September and October, I'm going to have to travel. And then the zones around my house open right at the end of October. So November and December is typically more of staying home in the home area.
Yep.
And in January, I do a little more traveling just because when the ice comes, you just have to travel a little bit more and zones start kind of popping around. So we can hunt, though, from September 1st, teal season starts in Nebraska, to the last Sunday in January.
Wow.
If you're willing to drive a couple hours, sometimes 3, I mean, I can hunt. It's open that entire time. So it's a long.
That's wild.
It's a long.
That's a long season.
That's super wild because Minnesota's September 1st for teal, and then it's done it's done before Thanksgiving this year, just how the calendar falls. But for ducks, anyways.
Yeah. Well, I don't think that Kansas and Nebraska are the best states for duck hunting that there are, but what they are great about is that birds never get all the way south of us. They get to us pretty quickly, and it's a super long season. So as far as where I would want to live, I wouldn't want to live anywhere else because like you go too far north and
you're in the honey hole.
Right. Yeah. And the ice line gets to us in December or January, and the ice line floats north-south. And those birds ride that ice line, north-south, north-south, north-south. So if you get a lot of you want a cold down and a heat up and a cold, like from mid-December to January, if you can get 4 different freezes and unfreezes, oh my gosh, because it's fresh birds all the time. They go north, they go south, they go north. So it's like anytime they travel like that, I say they're fresh birds. Once they get in January, they're super smart no matter what. But anytime you get them moving, you wouldn't call them stale. You know, they're just smarter. So we are really blessed with just how it plays out. It's not the best day for day waterfowl season, but I think it's just to live in this area. I wouldn't want to live in it. If I could move one place, I think it would probably be like north central Nebraska, where I could still hit Kansas, but then slip up into South Dakota a little easier. I think that range for living, I don't think you can beat it because you can just hunt forever. I mean, your season's like in the hundreds, 140-day season. It's just ridiculous. I mean,
that's
if
crazy.
you want to travel a little bit,
That's a lot of shells.
Right. And you just can't beat that.
No, you can't. That's amazing.
So being that the season's still relatively young for you, like, do you have any goals kind of going into it, you know, just for the rest of the season and maybe some like milestones for the app for this year for you?
I normally set a statistical goal, but I haven't really done that this year. I've been hard on doing it. I'm kind of like, I don't think I'll ever hit this, but shooting 70% is kind of, I don't think I'll ever do it. But I got to 60 in a year. But that's crazy. That's impressive. Conservative. I'm so conservative with my shot selection. I mean, on my videos, people get pissed off at me all the time. It's like, why'd you only shoot one? Why'd you only shoot one? Like, I didn't think I was going to hit him on the other side. My rule is if I'm not mad at myself for shooting at it, I normally don't pull the trigger. If I'm not mad at myself for missing, I normally don't pull the trigger. So I'm not a great shot. I'm just stupid conservative with my shot selection. But I don't know. I don't really have any goals this year as far as the app goes. I shot my most ducks I've ever shot in a season last year, so I know I'm really chasing that. So I don't really have any statistical goals this year. I have growth of goals for the app, so I'm pumping a lot of money into ad campaigns and that kind of thing. I put so much money into that. People are like, I can't believe you took away the free aspect. It's like, you want to see my bank account to how much money I spent on this thing?
If you can only see the back end, right?
I give it to you for free. Yeah. I'm sorry. Let me give you the total of what I've spent, and then you can cry about it not being free.
I tell you what, though, from the value of what you do have the app listed on the marketplace, I think it's priceless from the data perspective that you're getting compared to a lot of other apps that exist right now, and what the limited data you get from those apps. And I'm holistically speaking from deer hunting to waterfowl hunting and everything in between, but I think it's a pretty fair price point what you've got it listed at with all things considered.
No one else is doing exactly what we're doing. They and one thing I really want to get to the bottom of is there's so much debate about spinners. And so that's another thing that we're going to have really soon is there's no place in there to put in what, if you're using motion and what type of motion. And that's going to come really soon because what I want to get in there,
that's super interesting.
Spinners are so observational data. And it's like, oh, they flared the spinners. How do you know they flared the spinners? How do you know that? Oh, because they flared. I've seen ducks flare when I'm not using spinners. You're just guessing that they're flaming the spinner. You're just guessing. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. But I want to find. I think that I'm a big spinner proponent. I don't see ducks when the ducks are flaring and I take down the spinner. I don't see things change. Okay. But when ducks are flaring and I double and triple, quadruple the hide, I do see things change. So I want to get motion on the app really soon to where people can put down, if they're using motion, what type of motion, so that after we get a several thousand hunts log, we can move from observational data. And when people kind of start giving their data, kind of like, well, I've got some data.
Actually, I like that. Like I said, I'm a data guy, so I'm just like drooling over that because that is such an interesting thing that I've never, you hear people talk and discuss and debate it all the time, whether or not, what effects spinners have on ducks and flaring, and whether my brain's going a million miles an hour thinking of things. So that's awesome.
All right. So let's say you have a guy that hunts. The average hunter only hunts like 5 times a year. Okay.
Sure.
That's the average. So let's say you have a guy that hunts 20 times a year. He's a really serious hunter. Now you got some guys that are nuts and you just hunt 60, 70 days. But if someone hunts 20 times a year, they're pretty serious about what they're doing. So let's say that guy in a year, how many hunts is that guy going to be on where he claims the spinner is flaring the birds? 3 or 4 hunts? So his data pool for that year is 3. So over 5 years, you're talking 15 hunts is his data size that he's claiming that spinners flare ducks. That's a pretty small sample size. And not only is it a small sample size, it's observational data. So, I mean, in like the statistical world, it's garbage. It's like, oh, well, we don't believe that at all. There's no reason that we should believe that actually took place.
Right.
But people speak it as truth, and then it gets out in the community. And once again, like people talk, like I have a suspicion, and I don't say this much because people are going to hate me, but I have a suspicion that spinners don't flare geese like people say they do. Now, I'm not a big goose hunter, but I know on the river, I've shot geese over spinners. Now, people claim that spinners is just the death nail for geese, and I have a suspicion that that's one of those things. And I'm not saying it's not true at all because I'm not a goose hunter, but I have a suspicion that that's one of those things that gets out. It's like a fad thing to say, and it's like sunny days versus cloudy days. Some guys have told me they don't even hunt on cloudy days. It's a half duck different. So you're not, if you're going to shoot a half duck different on average a day and you're going to sit home on cloudy days. So people want to say, well, in my area, no, come on. In my area, it's true. Oh, so you're gonna ignore all of the thousands of hunt data we have because in your area, it's different.
Right.
So,
You're the anomaly, right?
Anytime that I pull that on people, that's what they always say. Well, here,
in my area,
in my area. So
that's funny.
That's kind of,
I like that.
Yeah, no, I still just can't get enough of the concept of it. Like my mind's been rattling because I'm a turkey nut too. So it's just like, I'm like, wow, no, I wonder how this could plug in for turkey hunting. And like we're talking about decoy spreads and all that different type of stuff. So no, it's just.
I'll tell you what, man, you get thinking about it and you want to get me kick-started on it. I need someone to get a little fire in me and say, like, we'll go on this with you. If you guys have some ideas on one, because I have been thinking just recently about all of those avenues, the North American this, that, and so it's just like a whole chain and you can reach it off the whole. I already have the base structure set up. That's the hard part. Is getting the bones of it. Getting the bones of this thing developed, and I'm not a developer, but it was really, really complicated, and it took some super senior level developers to do it all because it's multiple language. Developers typically work in one set language. Well, this is like 3 or 4 things that are like. So in order for a developer even to work on this thing, they have to. It almost takes a team or like one special guy that knows it all. So. Science. You guys ever like, hey, let's get that turkey thing going? You give me a call. I could be pushed into really easy.
That's awesome. I love it. Well, Evan, should we do? We want to be, cognizant of your time here tonight, Elliott. It's getting kind of later, but do you want to do some quick fire questions?
Oh yeah, I've got some good ones.
Sweet.
Go ahead.
So, Elliott,
you go first.
Yeah. So we close out each segment here. We'll just do. We ask each guest like just a handful of quick fire questions, just quick, whatever comes to your mind kind of thing. So my first one is my go-to is the early morning gas station drink and snack. What are you going to?
So in a gas station, I'll do like 70% coffee and then 30% like French vanilla with a little bit of fruit in there. And I normally don't get food in the morning for some reason. If I do, I'm going to get food. It's either going to be like a apple fritter, donut, A lot most
What do
times
you
it's just that.
What do you have for gas stations by you? Like down by you? Oh, you got
Casey's?
Casey's
Okay.
too.
Yeah,
Perfect.
Casey's is everywhere.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's Quick Trip up here for us for the gas station market.
So you guys are Minnesota, you said?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
Well, how far north are you in Minnesota? Like up close to Boundary Water or down?
Luke's in southeastern Minnesota. I'm in central Minnesota.
Okay. I haven't been there much. We went to the Boundary Waters one time in the 90s.
Oh, okay.
It's a great. You should listen to our. What is that? Was that our second episode or third episode? We talked about Boundary Waters. We've done it a couple times.
Yeah.
It's a great place. It's a phenomenal place.
Yeah.
We were up there before cell phones, and we did like 3-day trips straight into it without cell phones.
Nice. Love it. Ev, what do you got?
Okay, so you get one hunt out of the whole entire fall. Where are you going? What time of year are you going? And just kind of break that down that for hunt. This is like if you could pick one hunt out of all the different types of hunt that you do for waterfowl, what is that hunt?
It would be a late season mallard hunt over an ice hole. Hunting ice holes, especially on I've got one place in mind. I could send you the video. So what it would be is one specific place in Kansas where it gets frozen up and it's pretty easy to cut ice holes. And man, there is nothing like a mallard hunt over an ice hole that you either found or broken yourself. It just doesn't get more fun than
that. Nice. So last one, and this is more maybe like a tactical question, but like, just tell us what is your setup? Like, what are you running for duck hunting? What are you running for a gun, calls, that type of stuff?
I'm using the Ducklander calls. It's a local guy here. He's fairly well known, Bobby Hayes.
Nice.
Great guy. Just a killer duck hunter. I just switched over to a 20 gauge. I'm using Weatherby Element 20 gauge, which I'm loving it so far.
Loving it. I've heard there's a lot of people that they're kind of, I mean, not just from the duck hunting world, but even just turkey hunting and everything in general. I mean, it seems like the 20 gauge is it's kind of taking the world by storm now. It's like 12 gauge and 10.
So much less. It kicks so much less, and you have so much less. I use a shot cam, so I can see that I have so much less muzzle jump on it. And it's just awesome. I'm using Flight Day ammunition, bismuth 5s and 6s, flightdayammo.com. A friend of mine has just started this bismuth company.
Sweet.
It's great stuff. Let's see what else. Decoys. I'm using. I work with Rogers and Final Approach, so I'm using a lot of.
Perfect.
Nice.
Decoys and waders and all that kind of stuff is running through Rogers, and then they've got really good stuff.
And
as far as decoys, I just match what's in the area. We go from teal, and then right now probably there's gadwall and pintails starting to drop in, so we just kind of match what the migration is.
Love it.
Sweet. My last one is kind of a out of left field one. I'll just say that. So, are you a Pandora or Spotify guy?
Spotify.
Okay, so what is your just like go-to playlist? Like, just give me your top 3 artists off that playlist.
So I love early 80s European music. So I love like the Smiths.
Okay.
Morrissey. I listen to Josh Garrels probably more than anything. I don't know if you guys have heard of. He's the only Christian artist that I like, and I use a ton of his music and everything I do which I don't even guys know I have a podcast, but from my podcast to the YouTube channel, Josh Garrels is just so inspirational. There's a lot of others. I'm trying to think. Every song I've ever liked is on my liked list, and I just listen to that. And there's only like 400 songs on there.
Nice.
So those are the two. I love Johnny Cash also, but I don't know, something like early 80s, like The Cure, Depeche Mode.
Nice.
80s.
Love it.
Awesome. Sweet. That's all I got for my quick fire. Evan, you got any more left?
No, that's it. No, Elliott, we just want to tell you thank you so much once again for taking time out of your day and just kind of pouring some wisdom on us. And, once again, if you haven't done it already, go out and check out the app. There's so much wisdom and information and data in there that's only going to make you a better hunter. So definitely go check that out, and we'll be sure to share all the cliff links and the notes for all your socials and for the app and for everything else. But we just want to say thank you so much for hopping on with us, and it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, appreciate you guys having me on. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on this journey through faith in the great outdoors. We hope today's episode has inspired you to seek God's presence in the wilderness and deepen your connection with nature. If you enjoyed today's discussion, don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe to the Wild Faith Podcast on your favorite platforms, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. By subscribing, you'll never miss an episode, and you'll continue to be a part of the Wild Faith Podcast community. We'd also love to hear from our listeners, so please don't hesitate to reach out with your questions, comments, or topic suggestions. You can connect with us on social media or through our website. Your feedback is important to us and helps us improve and tailor our content to better serve you. And always remember, the great outdoors isn't just a playground for hunting and fishing. It's a sanctuary for finding solace and spiritual renewal. As you gear up for that next adventure, I pray you find God's presence in the crackling of a campfire, the thrill of reeling in your catch, or the quiet solitude found in nature. Until next time, thank you for listening to the Wild Faith Podcast. Take care, and God bless.